Welcome to the What's So Smart podcast, powered by the Huntsville Madison County Chamber of Commerce. I'm your host, Clark Dunn. Huntsville, Alabama is known as a smart place, but really, what's so smart about it? In this podcast, we will talk to the leaders of Huntsville's economic and cultural development to answer that question. From rockets to genomics, from cyber to music, What's So Smart will explore the visionary and data-driven initiatives that make Huntsville so smart. Stay connected with us on all your social media platforms at A Smart Place. You can watch the full conversations on our YouTube channel at Huntsville, Alabama, USA, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy this episode of the What's So Smart podcast. Welcome to the What's So Smart podcast. Today, I sit down and talk with Matt Sloane of Skyfire Consulting. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So I want to talk a little bit about your background coming from, because you've had unique experiences kind of leading up to now being here in Huntsville and being here with Skyfire. Talk a little bit about your time in Atlanta and even prior to that, your time with CNN.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up outside of Philadelphia.
Okay.
I went down to Atlanta to go to school at Emory. And while I was at Emory, I decided I wanted to go into media and journalism, and CNN's world headquarters is right there in Atlanta. So it actually was very convenient. It's kind of a funny story, actually. During the 2000 election, when we didn't know if we had a president, my freshman roommates and I were like, hey, we should go down to CNN Center. I bet something really cool is going on. And we did, and they had a talk show in the atrium there, and somebody said, hey, you want tickets for the show? We're like, oh, yeah, okay, sounds great. So we sat in the audience, and then I went up to the host afterward, and I said, hey, how do I get an internship here? And she was like, talk to that lady. And then, 3 months later, I was working at CNN as an intern, as a freshman in college. They said, hey, send us your resume. And I was like, I don't even have a resume. I've been in college for 3 months. So, I worked there almost 15 years.
Wow.
In total, between internship, full-time, and freelance. And so I spent most of my time there working in medical news with Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who you may have heard of, and really incredible, time in my life. And then I just decided, I've been here, at that point, it was 14 years, time for me to kind of do my own thing, but I wasn't really sure what my own thing was going to be. And so I decided to keep freelancing for CNN while I figured it out, but I left my full-time job. And in about April or May of that year, I was asked to go speak to some public safety, public information officer trainees about how CNN covered major news stories. And the day before that talk, I got my first drone. And so I said, hey, by the way, we got these flying cameras now that we can annoy you with. And I had 4 fire chiefs come up to me after that and said, hey, how do I get that for my department? And it was like light bulb moment for me.
Wow.
I was like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. So that's the day that we started Skyfire.
Okay.
I had done EMS in college, so I sort of knew enough about public safety to be dangerous. And, at that time, the drone industry was very new, at least on the consumer side.
Around what year was that?
That was 2014.
2014.
So that was, May 14th, 2014 was the day I gave that. I just looked it up because it was exactly 10 years prior. And, it was really fascinating because, at that point we were still duct taping GoPros to toy drones and things like that. And we were, making it up as we went along, and then it's been 10 years now. So, I left, I was in Atlanta until the pandemic, and December of 2020 decided to move out here to Huntsville. And we're now in the process of moving our headquarters out here to Huntsville. And just could not have been happier about that move.
Yeah. So with Skyfire, I mean, how did the name come about? And then how did you kind of go about saying obviously the pandemic was such a huge thing that then Huntsville is going to be this new home for it.
Yeah, well, the name actually was originally Atlanta Drone Consultants, which was a mouthful and had nothing to do with what we did. But my wife came up with the name Skyfire, and so she gets the credit for that. But we were primarily working with fire departments at the time. And so Sky and Fire, and I was like, oh yeah, that's really good. I've come up with 60 names that weren't nearly as good, but this is awesome. And so we had been operating out of Atlanta. We had several hundred public safety clients all over the country, and so during the pandemic, when we were all virtual, my wife and I were like, maybe it's time to do something different, as I think a lot of us were reevaluating our lives at that point. And my wife's aunt lived here in Huntsville, and she said, hey, why don't you come out and spend a week at my place and just see what you think? And we just fell in love with the place. So as it turns out, it was not related to business why we chose Huntsville, but it turned out to be an amazing thing for us because of everything that's going on at the Arsenal, with the defense drone industry. And then, of course, with the FBI moving a bunch of people down here, a lot of their drone programs are based here in Huntsville. And, sort of the joke is like, literally you can't swing a dead cat in my neighborhood without, hitting somebody who works in the drone industry. And so it turned out to be very fortuitous for us. And I've gotten really, plugged in with the drone community here, which has been amazing.
Yeah. So prior to your aunt kind of saying, "Hey, you should come here and visit Huntsville," have
Yeah.
you been to Huntsville before?
Never.
Or like, did you have any preconceived knowledge of what Huntsville was or anything going on with
All I
Huntsville?
knew about Huntsville was that Space Camp was here.
Okay.
And I was like, 9-year-old me really wanted to come to Space Camp and my parents wouldn't pay for it. So I'd never been here. Didn't know how to get here. Didn't know anything about it other than rockets.
Yeah. Have you since been to Space Camp since you've been here?
I have been to the Rocket Center many times.
Okay.
I'm trying to work with them and maybe do like an adult space camp experience for my staff, which would
Okay.
be super cool. But my kid's in Huntsville City Schools, and so his fifth grade. Actually, both of my kids are, and their fifth grade year they get to go to space camp, so they're super excited about that, and I'm super jealous about it. So.
So, I mean, obviously now that like as you're in the process of moving Skyfire here and your family's all here, that kind of keeps you here. Over the last, I mean, I guess you've been here for 3 years now. What other elements of Huntsville kind of keep you tied in and kind of now it's become home for you?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. I mean, we live in Owens Crossroads, so we're kind of on that side of the mountain. So we get out to the lake a lot, which I love. We have a little pontoon boat out there at Lake Guntersville. I love the fact that it's a slower pace than Atlanta, although not a slow pace. It is slower, less traffic and all that kind of stuff. But I love the character of the people here. Like everybody's interesting to talk to. Everybody here is either like a rocket scientist, a federal agent, or like an Army general, or some engineering company supporting one of those three things. And so just everybody's so fascinating to talk to. And just I guess the term is diversity of thought,
Okay.
and Atlanta's such a melting pot that it's so hard to like, you can't say there's one industry in Atlanta, right? Or there's, 2 or 3 even, there's a million. Everybody could, be doing a million things. So it's made it really cool to find like groups of people that we're friends with and groups of people that we want to work with and groups of people that our kids can be friends with and stuff like that. And frankly, where we lived in Atlanta, I couldn't send my kids outside without worrying about them getting hit by a car. It was just
Wow.
like here that, we're in a neighborhood with a cul-de-sac and they can just run wild and be kids. And I love that.
Yeah, it's a little bit slower pace of life too, and like I said, even though it's not slow, and things are, I mean, over the last few years, really since you've been
Yeah.
here, Huntsville's just absolutely blossomed.
Yeah.
As you mentioned a little bit of some of the work that you're now doing with Skyfire, now that you're here in Huntsville, talk a
Yeah.
little bit about some of the maybe even some of the more specifics that you're able to kind of support and like what the day-to-day operations look like at Skyfire.
Yeah, absolutely. So, our company is focused primarily, on the public safety space. So police, fire, emergency management. We're really lucky that a lot of that is based here, which is awesome. What's funny is coming here, I knew really nothing about the defense drone industry, and they might as well be two totally different industries. The companies are different, the people are different, but we're starting to see those things kind of converge a little bit. As the military is using smaller and smaller aircraft, so instead of a multi-million-dollar giant airplane, they've got little handheld quadcopters that they can hand launch, and so they're kind of coming for our space a little bit, and we're learning a lot from the military drone world, which has been around for 20 years. And so we focus a lot on training, program development, and consulting. And so we've worked since we've been here. We've worked really closely with Huntsville Police Department and starting to work a little bit with the fire department, just kind of helping support their drone program. Which was already excellent before I got here. So I can take no credit for that. But, we're also working a lot in the training aspect with a lot of the federal agencies that have people here at the base. And so that's really been kind of a big win for us. We do a lot of work with the FBI. One of my colleagues is the former head of the FBI's drone program.
Wow.
So he was super excited because the program that he helped create is now based here in Huntsville. Which is very exciting. So we do a lot of work with them on training. In fact, they're out training with the FBI right now as we speak. And so that's been really cool. The other really interesting thing that happened is our partnership with UAH. I knew somebody from UAH from drone circles years ago. And when I moved out here, I reconnected with him, and he was able to get me connected with I2C at UAH. So I had my first office out there.
Okay.
And that community is so exciting because, it's students and it's engineering and it's like they're so connected to space and aerospace. And so through my connections with UAH, I started working more with the police department. Then I got connected with the chamber, and they connected me with the airport. And so now we've got this like really cool circle of people that are working together. And we're actually about to open, we've announced it publicly already, so I can talk about it, but we're about to open a training and testing village out at the airport on their western property there, which is primarily dedicated to drone testing and training.
Wow.
So it's, and like in the course of 3 years, it's like amazing what we've been able to put down roots wise here in Huntsville. So it's been a really great place for that.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, it's just a testament to like though Huntsville is growing so much, the community is still pretty tight.
Yeah,
and being able to like go from what, like you said, the I2C to the chamber to all of this fairly quickly.
Yeah,
in a short amount of time. I mean, is there sort of I mean, you talked a little bit about how the partnership with UAH kind of, obviously, I would say college students are probably getting a little bit of that opportunity with internships and stuff. Is there anything that Skyfire is doing to kind of maybe even introduce it to a younger generation too, and kind of build that up?
Yeah, actually, one of the things I'm most excited about, and it's very early on, is we're starting to talk to the Huntsville City School System about how do we get this stuff into the high schools and even the middle schools. Certainly at the collegiate level, it makes a lot of sense. And, UAH has a great aerospace program, so that's kind of already there. But we're really excited about getting into the middle and high school because the consumer drone industry is about to hit its inflection point. So without boring you to death with all the details, the FAA's Reauthorization Act for 2024 was just passed 2 weeks ago. And in that is the pathway to all of the things like drone deliveries of packages and, all kinds of really exciting stuff in the drone industry. Well, to do all that, we're going to need pilots. And we're a couple of years away from needing them, but the kids in high school are a couple of years away from being trained. And so we're excited about kind of putting together a pipeline and starting to get kids interested in, aviation in general, not just like flying airplanes, but flying drones. There really was no pipeline for drone pilots outside of the military. And so we're excited to kind of bring that knowledge to the younger kids.
Yeah. And I mean, I was over the last few years too. I mean, I think I got a drone a couple of years ago. I got a DJI like Mini, I think is what I have, and like this the range at which you can get a drone from just off the shelf at Walmart to something like that, and even beyond that, allows that adoption to happen early on for somebody. I know. So we talked a little bit about it off air, but you actually have your own podcast too that you just kind of started. Talk a little bit about how that podcast came about and like and the concept behind that.
Yeah. So this is all born out of Huntsville stuff too, which is kind of cool. So I almost 2 years ago now, we were right in the height of the pandemic, and business was tough for a lot of people during that time. A big chunk of our business was in-person training, and so we weren't doing that during COVID, and so we were kind of having to reinvent ourselves, and it's exhausting. And so one of the things that people, I think we all go to LinkedIn and say like, hey, I just got a new $1 billion contract, or I just got 5 new clients today. But nobody ever goes to LinkedIn and says like, wow, being an entrepreneur is really hard. And I feel, like I'm not getting a lot of support. It's lonely at the top. This was my idea, and 12 other people's livelihoods are kind of resting on it. And so, I just decided like, I'm going to be vulnerable, and I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
We don't do that because we don't want investors or partners to see like, oh, this guy can't hack it.
It's like, he has some weakness.
Right.
I shouldn't invest or whatever.
Exactly. And I, at the time I was like, look, I can't be quiet about it anymore. And that's not my nature anyway. So I went to LinkedIn and I just said, I don't know what this is going to become, but I'm just putting it out there that being an entrepreneur is hard. There's no support for people like us because nobody wants to talk about it. And so Rigved Joshi, who's the executive director of I2C at UAH, he commented on it and he said, hey, I've got a building full of 25 entrepreneurs. We can actually do something about this. Yeah. So like, let's chat. And so I went and had a meeting with him, and we came up with some ideas about how he could support the entrepreneurs inside I2C. And that ultimately led to me saying like, well, let me do what I know how to do, which is as a former media professional, like talk about it, put a podcast together. So Rigved introduced me to a woman named Krista Moulton, who's a therapist here in town. She works with a lot of entrepreneurs, and we just said like, well, let's just start a podcast and see what happens. So the podcast is called Emotional Runway. The meaning of that is, we always talk about fiscal runway and how much money we have as a company to continue to operate. But without emotional runway, you can't be there and be present for your staff. So we did a season 1, 12 episodes. Then we got busy running our businesses, and so we will be coming back for season 2. But it was a really cool way to explore the idea of mental health for entrepreneurs. I don't know which shark it was, but one of the sharks on Shark Tank said entrepreneurs are the only group of people that'll work 100 hours a week, so they don't have to work 40 hours a week. And it could not be more true, right? I mean, it's when you're working for somebody else, you get a paycheck every 2 weeks. You go into work, you do the best you can, you come home, and you don't think about it. It's not the case with being an entrepreneur. So I was excited to bring those resources to other people, but also for myself to talk to Krista and share that experience with others. And it resonated. I mean, people are like, yeah, you're right. There really isn't a lot of resources for entrepreneurs for a lot of the reasons I mentioned. We don't want to talk about it. So we're looking forward to doing season 2. And it was a cool project. And with all of the neurodiversity we have here in Huntsville too, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are, they're actually neurodiverse, like they're on the spectrum, or there's some other type of issue going on, but they just have really interesting ways at looking at things. And so we just found so many interesting people to talk to, and we're excited for more.
I mean, over your, I guess, 10 years of entrepreneurship, I mean, if thinking as we're sitting in May of 2024, is there one thing that you would like give advice to some entrepreneur that maybe is listening to this that says, hey, like, what advice would you give them if they're just starting out on day one, or things not necessarily to maybe do to be successful, but maybe things to avoid?
Yeah, don't spend your own money. That's my one piece of advice. No, I'm kidding, although not really. But yeah, no, I think the one thing that I would say is, first of all, don't be afraid to ask for help. It is lonely at the top, and you hear that as a cliche, but at the end of the day, I'm the one that has had the original idea. I'm the one that brought the team together. I'm the one that's got my name on all the debt, that took all the risk, that my family is in, sort of put their life savings on the line for this thing. And so that's scary. And so you need to talk to people who understand that. And it's not unusual. Companies fail all the time. Companies succeed all the time. And in fact, if you listen to any of these other great podcasts where they have the, people who like Elon Musk and, Mark Cuban and people who have made, billions of dollars, they all have a story like this, right? Like I remember one, maybe it was the Airbnb founders. They said, you go through like a seed round or a Series A round. He's like, we went through a Visa round where we just had a book of all the credit cards that we had maxed out, and we would just, the creditors would call and we would just ignore them. And that's a reality of starting a business, especially during a pandemic and a near recession. And so, I would say those are kind of the things to just be aware of, that there's nothing easy about this. There is no free lunch. You will be working a ton, and you'll want to be, because it's your passion. At the same time, I also think it's really important to stay humble as you're going through this. It just understanding that like being nice to people is like half the battle.
Yeah,
it's actually
it goes a long way.
It goes a long way, right? You can have a great product, and if you're just a jerk, nobody's going to want to deal with you. But we've had clients tell me, we've had clients tell us, and my whole staff is like this. It's not just me. Hey, you guys are always responsive. You're always respectful. We have people call us at 2:00 in the morning and saying, I'm out on an operation and I can't figure out how to do XYZ, and we'll answer those calls.
Wow.
So I think that's really important. Customer service is kind of a lost art these days. So I think that's really critical. And then the last piece I would say is just making sure you have a great team around you. There's absolutely no way we would be here if it weren't for the team that I have around me. We don't have, I may be entitled to CEO, but there's no hierarchy. Everybody is empowered to make decisions. Everybody's empowered to be good stewards of customer service. And frankly, they're the ones that are out in the field talking to our customers more often than I am.
Yeah.
And so, if I can't trust those people to be out there, if I don't know that they share the same passion that I do, then it doesn't work. And so I think that's really critical too.
Yeah. And I think the comment you made about just being willing to ask, I mean, I think Huntsville is a community that's willing to help. You just have to be willing to ask. And it's it's easy said, but it's a hard step to take.
Yeah.
But it's that one step in the right direction that can really bode well for any entrepreneur listening, anybody that's even wanting to start something.
Well, and I have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. And so I'm trying to like give them, life advice or whatever. And, it's in obviously smaller scale than what we're talking about. But I have, throughout my life, the one thing that has always worked for me is asking for what I want. I told you already that I went up to the host of a CNN, national news network program and said, hey, can I have an internship? And she said yes.
Yeah.
I would never have been there if I hadn't gone and asked that question.
And the worst thing they can say is no.
Absolutely.
And like that's at least they've responded.
At least
at least you have feedback.
You laid it out on the field, right? You ask the question, and if the answer is no, then it's no. Yeah. And it's been no plenty of times, but it's also been yes times where, if I didn't have that conversation or if I didn't ask that question, there's a kind of a really funny story about my time here in Huntsville. Is my daughter's name is Emery because we went to Emory University, my wife and I both, and so we named her Emery. And we were in the pool at our neighborhood, and somebody said, "Hey, come here, Emery." And I said, "Hey, how do you know my daughter's name?" And she's like, "That's my daughter's name." And we've become very close friends just because I engaged in conversation. It turns out that, sort of this is not the best part of the story, but we did end up working with the husband's company doing some really great drone stuff because it's Huntsville. Of course, he works in the drone industry.
Of course.
But we've also gotten great friends out of it. And, it's just stuff like that where I'm always about, talk to people, be nice to people, extend the olive branch where you can, help people where you can. That's really at the core of what we do at Skyfire, is we're not selling drones, we're selling perspective. We're selling things that make it easier for first responders to do their jobs and go home to their families at night. If I was in this for the money, we would have been shut down 8 years ago, but I'm in it because I believe in it. I'm in it because I want cops and firefighters and the citizens that they're serving to be safe. And that's important to keep that at the center of it and not just money.
Yeah. And so from your perspective, I mean, you've been in Huntsville for 3.5 years now. From your perspective, you've talked a lot about it already, but what makes Huntsville just such a smart place? Is it that community of that willingness and eagerness that other people have too to ask for help and the willingness for them to give you help? Or is there something else that maybe stands out to you?
Yeah. God, some of it you just can't put your finger on, right? There's just something magical about this town. And I honestly don't want anybody to know about it because then our traffic will get worse. No, I think it's people's eagerness to help. I think it also, the pump is primed, right? I mean, all the industries that I deal with are here, right? So all the big companies, all the small companies, the agencies that we deal with all have a presence here. And so it's easy to say like, hey, let's meet at, Stovehouse and have a conversation about this. Like that's something that's easy to do. But I also think people's willingness to help and people's accessibility too. I mean, my just singing the praises of the chamber, when I initially met with Lucia to talk about what our projects, she said, "Hey, have you talked to the mayor about this?" And I was like, "How would I have talked to the mayor about this?" She's
I don't have his number.
Do you want to? I said, "Yeah, okay." And so like 2 weeks later, I was sitting there with Mayor Battle and explaining our, what we were planning on doing. And he was like, "Yeah, what do you need? What can we do to help?" And like, that never would have happened in Atlanta. We held an event a couple weeks ago out at our test site, and Mayor Battle came out and flew a drone and hung out with us for a while. He didn't just show up for the photo op. And that's cool. Like you don't get that everywhere. And so I think that's really special.
Yeah. There's things like that make just like, it's the unique experience that you get to have here. And just like that is a testament just to Huntsville. It's a community it's created. And like you said, you want other people to know about it, but you're also like, I like kind of the traffic the way it is right now.
I like our medium city.
I'm good right here. But well, I appreciate you taking the last little bit to talk about the work you do at Skyfire.
Yeah.
We'll have all the information in the episode notes, but thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the What's So Smart podcast. Stay connected with us on all your social media platforms at A Smart Place. You can watch the full conversations on our YouTube channel at Huntsville, Alabama, USA, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed hearing more about what makes Huntsville so smart.